Hello everybody and welcome to this video of Eduard's 172 scale BF109, and we're actually jumping right into cockpit painting with a few small layers of chipping fluid over a medium grey, followed by the actual interior colors. After the main color, a slightly lighter color was sprayed from above to give a little bit of a highlight in certain areas. A little bit of rubbing with a stiff brush and some water to reactivate the chipping fluid makes the cockpit look really well lived in. But the two-tone color of the green was, well, just a happy little accident. Using a bit of sponge to apply paint is a little bit more random than a paintbrush, but for small metal chips it works okay. But for the really tiny detailed painting, a small brush is the only tool that you can use, and I prefer using AK and ammo acrylics for this type of paintwork. To glue the instrument panel, I simply use Temme X22, and it dries slower than super glue, but it also dries to a glossy sheen in the instrument dials, which I think looks really nice. The particular aircraft I'm building was flown by Oberleutnant Paul Temme, who was the adjutant of Gruppe 1 of Jagdgeschwader 2, or the first group of the 2nd Fighter Squadron. He was shot down on the 13th of August 1940, also known as Adlertag, and here I'm trying to match bullet holes in the model with those shown on historical pictures. More on that later. The instructions say to attach the landing flaps before gluing in the lower wing. However, you'll then run into problems with wing root, which you will see later on. So if you're building this kit yourself, consider attaching the landing flaps after gluing in the lower wing. Paul would be credited with 6 aerial victories, including a Bristol Blenheim on the 2nd of August 1940. He'd been flying in a Kette, or Wide Vic of 3, circling over Le Havre when it seen the British plane suddenly appear out of the cloud base. It had immediately tried to dodge back into the cloud, but Paul had given chase, wondering whether it wasn't a Ju-88 after all. He soon spotted it again, however, and the Blenheim's gunner opened up, just as Paul opened fire too. Cloud hit it once more, and then it emerged again, and Paul fired again until, cursing, his cannon jammed. But at that moment, noted Paul, the Englishman's right engine burst into flames. Cloud hit it once again, but then it spiraled out of the sky on fire. Paul followed it down and watched as it crashed into the center of Le Havre, exploding and blazing fiercely. None of the 3-man crew from 59 Squadron survived. Moments later, the bombs detonated, causing considerable damage. For painting, I'm still figuring out how to do black basing in a proper way. I start with a thin random layer of the camouflage color before adding in several different shades of similar colors to give a little bit more, variation in the paint scheme. And then to blend everything in, I finish off with another layer of the camouflage color, this time incredibly thin, maybe 90% thinner and 10% paint. And all of the airbrushing work I do, I'm using a 0.2mm nozzle. Adlertag was the first day of a military operation by the Luftwaffe to destroy the British Royal Air Force prior to a land invasion by the German army. The Luftwaffe was to destroy the RAF in order to prevent it from attacking the invasion fleet or providing protection for the Royal Navy's home fleet, which might attempt to prevent a landing by sea. The essential target was RAF Fighter Command. The service's destruction would deny the British their air superiority assets. Throughout July and early August, the Germans made preparations for Adlertag, and the date of the assault was postponed several times because of bad weather. Eventually, it was carried out on the 13th of August 1940, although heavy morning fog prevented several of the bomber and fighter raids from taking off. For the modeling camouflage, I'm again using highly diluted paint with maybe only 5% paint to 90 or 95% thinner. Working at a relatively low air pressure, this part of the painting is done more or less freehand while looking at pictures of the airplane after it was shot down near Shoreham. Unfortunately, I was having a little bit of focus issues with my camera, so if something is out of focus, don't worry, it'll soon be alright again. But let's get back to 1940 and Adlertag and the story of how Paul was shot down. The unexpected cloud had not prevented Siegfried Bethge from leading his second staffel over the channel on a free hunt early that morning, joined by the Gruppe Adjutant Oberleutnant Paul Temme. Hurricanes near Brighton, Siegfried noted later. Oberleutnant Temme stayed there. Shut down? Paul had in fact been shot down just as they were turning for home. Struck from behind, bullets had hit his engine and radiator cooling system. With his oil pressure rising, he had crash-landed, wheels up, in a cornfield within sight of the hangars at Shoreham Airfield. Still in one piece, Paul released his harness and clambered out, only to see a number of gunners from an AK position guarding the airfield running towards him, rifles in hand. Feeling a sudden, inexplicable need to urinate, he peed against the fuselage of his Messerschmitt, which seemed to have a calming effect on his pursuers. Instead of rough handling him, the gunners led him gently to the station commander at the airfield, greeted him in perfect German. "Oh, ein sehr früher Gast," a barely early guest, and then asked Paul whether he was ready for some breakfast. Although Paul had not, in fact, eaten anything that morning, he politely declined the offer, feeling it would not be right to eat from the enemy's table. However, when the steward arrived with ham, eggs, toast and tea, and the station commander insisted he tuck in, Paul had a change of heart. After all, he was feeling quite hungry. The CO at Shoreham was not really sure what he was supposed to do with captured German airmen, so there having finished breakfast, he sent for his car and had Paul taken to the Royal Artillery in nearby Brighton. Taken to the mess, he found the gunners there were busy eating breakfast and reading papers, and in no mood to be hurried. Intrigued by their unexpected guest, they invited him to join them. Settling down to his second plate of bacon and eggs, Paul admitted that he had no idea there was such protocol between the services. That was as may be, but the gunners didn't much want him either, so passed him back to the RAF, this time at Farnborough, nearly 50 miles away. There was briefly interrogated by an army officer before being handed back to the RAF. "Take no notice of him," the RAF officer reassured him. "He isn't a pilot. Now, what about some breakfast?" At this rate, a surfeit of bacon and toast was beginning to seem more life-threatening than being shot down by hurricanes. Unlike Spitfires and Hurricanes, which had sliding rear canopies, the BF109's canopy was hinged to the sides, which made it difficult to get out of the airplane in case of emergencies. Which is why the 109 was equipped with explosive bolts to jettison the canopy by pulling a handle on the left side of the cockpit. So that's it for this little build. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Also, I hope you enjoyed the story of Oberleutnant Paul Temme and his little adventures. So with that, enjoy the last set of pictures. Bye bye!